Hello again. Today's video is going to be all about how we use text evidence to support a claim that we're making. This is a skill that you need to have all the way through the remainder of your academic career, whether that's just through 12th grade in your senior year, or if you plan to go on to college or post-secondary education. You're always going to have to be able to go back to the texts that you read and cite evidence to support claims that you're making. So today what we're going to do is a really quick review of figurative language, because we're going to be making some claims about figurative language. And then there's going to be some work for you to do with some poetry, because I know in some previous lessons you've already worked with some poetry. So this should all be a review for you, just looking at literal language versus figurative language. Literal language is when we say exactly what we mean. Figurative language is when what you say isn't actually what you mean and there's a hidden meaning. So let's just do a quick run through of some of the most common figurative language that we see in texts. Simile is when something is compared, two things are compared, and it uses like or as. So something like he walks like a turtle, or he is as slow as a turtle. Those would both be similes that tell us that the person is just really slow, right? Metaphors do the same thing, but they don't use like or as. And typically a metaphor turns an object or a person, a noun, into something else. So she is a bump on a log. That is a metaphor because it doesn't use like or as, but it still compares two things. The man is a speeding bullet. Well, he's not really a speeding bullet. He's just really fast, right? So that's similes and metaphors. Personification is when you give human characteristics to something that is not human or to an animal. So an example here is lightning danced across the sky. Well, lightning can actually dance, but when we look at it in the sky, sometimes it looks like it's dancing, right? So that would be figurative language called personification. A hyperbole is when we have an extravagant exaggeration about something. So if you've ever been a long walk and you might say, that walk felt like 1,000,000 miles long. It's not actually 1,000,000 miles long. It just was really long and it felt long to us. So that's a hyperbole. And then the last type, nope, there's two more types that we'll talk about. An onomatopoeia, just a word whose sound suggests its meaning. So things like bang, crash, boom, those are things that we see often in comic books. And then finally, alliteration, which is when we just see the same repeated consonant sound at the beginning of words. So Betsy bought bigger bottoms for her baby named Billy. That would be alliteration. So it's a really quick review of figurative language, and this presentation will actually be linked in the work that I have for you to do today, so you can kind of look back at this to remind yourself of what type of figurative language you're looking for. So I know that in a previous lesson, you looked at the poem Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost. And so we're going to look at that today together, and that's the model I'm going to use for you to make a claim about figurative language. So the prompt that we're going to be looking at is right here. How does the author use figurative language to create meaning in this poem? Okay, so we're going to read the poem together, and then we'll respond to the prompt together as a model, and then I'll have some practice for you to do on your own. And then it says to cite several pieces of text evidence to support your thinking and explain how it does that. So I'm going to model that for you so you can kind of see what that looks like, and then you'll be able to do the work on your own. So let's just read it once through together, and we'll go back and look for the figurative language, okay? Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. So this author is obviously talking about springtime, or when flowers start to bloom and things start to really blossom when the weather starts to get warmer. So let's look at the first line. Nature's first green is gold. Well, it's not literally saying that nature's first green, when the trees start to blossom, is gold. It's saying that it's such a worthwhile thing that it's comparable to gold, true gold, like the jewelry we wear, or the material gold, because gold is such a valuable thing. it's saying that nature is worth that much. So what we're going to do is go down here and we're just going to write line 1. And if you want to, you can copy and paste it. You don't have to, but I'm going to just so I know it when I want to go ahead and cite my evidence. And then over here, the type of figurative language, this is a metaphor because it's comparing nature to gold, and it doesn't use like or as. So here what I'm going to say is it's just, this is a metaphor explaining how the first bloom in spring is worth as much as gold. Okay. Then we'll look at one more together here. Her hardest hue to hold. Her hardest hue to hold. Lots of H sounds there. So if we take, line 2, and we copy it and bring it down here, that is actually alliteration. So here I'm going to write that it's alliteration, and it's saying that it's really hard for nature to hold this hue. It's not actually hard. It's just that it seems like it comes and goes really fast, right? So here the author is explaining that the hue of green, doesn't last very long. And then we could do one more. If you don't know how to make more lines in your table, you just press tab and I'll make another line. If we come down here, her early leaves of flower only for an hour, so it doesn't last very long. Then each leaf subsides to another leaf, so the tree fills in, or the bush fills in with lots of leaves. The garden, Eden is a garden, that's a biblical reference. So Eden sank to grief, became sad because all of the flowers and the blossoms on the trees are gone. Dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. So then down here in line 8, it's actually referring back up here to the metaphor about how green is gold. So I'm actually not going to write anything else down here, so I'm going to delete this row. But then I have to answer this prompt, and that's the last part. How does the author use figurative language? So we have 2 types of figurative language here, metaphors and alliteration, to create meaning in this poem. Cite several pieces of evidence to support your thinking and explain. So we have 2 pieces of evidence. So what we can do is come down here and we can just make a claim that says the author uses figurative language to create meaning in the poem by, and then you're going to answer that part. And then the next part would be text evident, or text that supports this is, and then you remember anytime you cite evidence in text, you need to put quotations in it. So this is where we would just copy the text that we have here. And paste it, and then that's our text evidence. You might even just make a claim like text that supports this is when the author uses a metaphor to, and then we already have done the work up here, explain how the first bloom in spring is worth as much as gold. Okay. And then we could say something like another example of figurative language in the text is when the author uses alliteration. And then we come up here, we would grab that text, we paste it down here, and then we would just say here the author is explaining, because we've already done the work up top. Here the author is explaining that the hue of green just doesn't last very long. Okay, and then you've responded to the prompt. You have a claim and you have a couple of pieces of evidence to support your thinking. So now you can try. On this same document, you have the model above. There is a link to the figurative language presentation right here if you'd like to access that. But I have a different poem for you to use. It's called Truth. It's by Nikki Grimes. So you can read through this poem, and then I'd like you to look for some figurative language as you read. And then you're going to respond to the same exact prompt that we just responded to together. How does the author use figurative language to create meaning in this poem? And then just make sure you're citing evidence to support it. So good luck and have a great time practicing that skill.